Hello guys, how are we doing and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be breaking down the huge weapon balancing patch that Treyarch implemented into Black Ops 6 yesterday. We're going to be breaking down changes to recoil, time to kill, and what the best gun is going to be for you to use at certain ranges to just optimize the time to kill for you. Now we're going to be kicking it off with recoil. There's a massive suggestion that recoil has been buffed massively. People are saying that, well, the pros are saying it's far easier to use guns now. There's no recoil. It's everything's a laser beam, and I'm here to sort of prove them wrong. Now the reason they're saying that is because the visual recoil itself has been reduced, which is absolutely zero impact in the actual recoil. It just changes the way the gun looks and how much the gun bounces visually when you're shooting your gun. So what we have here is the two main ARs we see in ranked play, AMAs and the GPR, and we can see that pre-patch and post-patch for both of these look fairly similar. You can see they've both got the same amount of vertical recoil and they both go from right to left in about the same manner. The only thing that I would argue in the pros' favor, or people who are saying that everything's a laser beam, is that the aiming idle sway has been reduced, which is basically when you aim your gun in, how much does it sway from left to right and up and down. Now that has been nerfed or buffed, sorry, very slightly. You now get less aiming idle sway, which means your bullets are probably closer together, which is sort of what we see here. We can see here, if we look on the right, that these bullets from the GPR post-patch are a little bit more tighter together than they were before, and that's mainly and only due down to the fact that aiming idle sway stability has increased. I do want to point out as well, they've made a delay to the aim idle sway, so that if you ADS, 2.2 seconds later, you will get heavier idle sway. So when you aim in, you ideally want to be shooting all of your shots within that first 2.2 seconds. Otherwise, you're going to have it's a little slightly harder to control recoil due to that increased aim idle sway. So let's take a look at how it looks on the SMGs, and we can see here it doesn't really change much. The AMAs has a much easier to control vertical recoil than the GPR, but it's a little bit more easier to control the horizontal recoil on the GPR because it doesn't deviate from right to left so much. Okay, so I'd argue here the GPR has slightly better recoil patterns. Now the two main subs we see in ranked play, or at least I see in ranked play, are the KSV and the Jackal, and these are the two I'm always constantly trying to choose between. You can see here that pre-patch and post-patch recoil patterns on both pretty much say the same story. Okay, it does deviate slightly, and as I said before, you can see the bullets tighten slightly up than they did before. You can see this is a little bit more bouncy. They're a slight bit tighter here, and that's because the aiming idle sway has been reduced. Now comparing these two recoil patterns, there's not much in it. You could argue that the KSV is a little bit easier to control because it's more vertical before just jarring out a little bit longer. You can see here the horizontal recoil takes into an impact a little bit sooner into the spray than the KSV does. So you could argue slightly KSV has better recoil here. So that's that myth debunked. Assault rifles, what adjustments have we done to here? So I'm going to speed through the actual statistics, but if you would like to pause it and take a look yourself, you're more than welcome to. The reason I'm speeding through it is because we're going to be breaking it down by what it actually all means later on in the video. So the AMAs and the GPR look like so. What they've done to the AMAs, they've introduced a medium damage range, and what essentially this does, within 15.2 meters, it essentially means that now, because they've increased the headshot multiplier as well, within 15.2 meters, you only need 2 headshots for the AMAs to reduce the time to kill to 240 milliseconds. Between 15.2 and 50.8, you still require 3 headshots to bring it back down to that 240. So that's the only noticeable change you'll find on the AMAs. On the GPR, there's really not much difference at all. All that's happened is that they've reduced the max damage range to 17.8. They've reduced it by about 1.3 meters, which means that within 17.8 meters, you now require 2 headshots to kill. Between 17.8 and 45.7, it's 3, and then after 45.7, it's 2 headshots. But there's no major changes to the GPR there. Nothing happened to mobility as well, so the mobility store stays as standard. We're going to be getting a bit more into mobility in a second, as it's a very much another key factor, as well as recoil, as well as time to kill, on what gun is best for you to use. Taking a look at the SMGs, overall, the headshot multiplier has been increased somewhat on some of the guns, but the main thing that's happened here is the changes to the damage range. Okay, so what we're going to be seeing across the board is a lot of increases in damage range. You can see here it's mainly up. Now, the KSV actually has had the time to kill impacted in a couple of instances. So between 19.7 and 31.8 meters, you now only require 4 headshots to kill an enemy, reducing, rather than 5, reducing the time to kill by 75 seconds from the pre-patch to the post-patch, to the current patch we're on. Now, over between 31.8 meters and over, it's essentially reduced the time to kill again. You only need 3 headshots rather than 4, reducing it again by 75 milliseconds. The same thing sort of happens over towards the Jackal. Now, there's something interesting that's happened to the Jackal here, where they've actually changed the headshot damage on here so that you now require, it doesn't make any difference within 17.1 meters. It doesn't make any difference if you hit headshots or not. You're still going to kill the enemy at 264 milliseconds. So the Jackal at this very close range, I'd argue, has been nerfed very slightly. Moving on to the Compact, the only thing that's really changed with the time to kill on Compact is the fact that now all you need is 6 headshots at that longest range to reduce the time to kill from 495 to 385, reducing it by 55 milliseconds, which from patch to patch is a very small amount. So what does this all mean? Now, we've looked at recoil. We've established that the AMAs and the GPR have fairly similar recoil, but the GPR's got slightly better. And then we've also assessed the fact that the KSV has very much slightly better recoil than the Jackal, if at all. So the next thing, other than time to kill, which we are going to get more onto later, is mobility. How mobile are these guns? Now, on this graph here, we've got some plotted values, okay? So the guns have been rated from a score of 0 to 100 on ADS speed, sprint fire speed, slide to fire speed, sprint movement speed, and aim walking speed. I want to repeat that again. ADS speed, sprint to fire speed, slide to fire speed, sprint movement speed, and aim walking speed. So that's like your strafe speed sort of thing. Now, the worst out of all of these is the AMAs. It was the worst on every single one of those categories, and the best on every single one of those categories is the Jackal. The Jackal gets given a score of 100, the AMAs 0. Now we can clearly see now where the other guns stack up between these, the best being the Jackal and the worst being the AMAs. Interestingly, there's some things I want to highlight here. Interestingly, the GPR has mobility closer to the Jackal, which is 100, than the AMAs. So it's more of an SMG than it is an AR if you're using AMAs as the base AR. So the Jackal clearly here has the highest mobility score. It's the most mobile SMG in ranked play. That's closely followed by the KSV, which is even more closely followed by the C9. The Compact and the P919 actually are a little bit worse. They have a mobility closer to the GPR, which is an AR, than they do the Jackal. Sorry. So in order: Jackal, KSV, C9, Compact, PP919, GPR, and then the AMAs with the worst mobility. So you could argue, okay, the Jackal, it's not got, it's got the best mobility, arguably somewhat slightly good recoil compared to its next competitor, the KSV. Why would you ever use anything but the Jackal for as a submachine gun, which we're going to get onto in a second? I'm going to answer that very question. Similarly here, you can see, okay, the GPR has a considerably better mobility score than the AMAs and better recoil. Why would you not use the GPR? That's because we're missing one out of the main 3 big factors of whether or not a gun's better than another. And now we're going to move on to time to kill and damage. So the 2 ARs are here, right? We can see now that the AMAs absolutely dominates every single range, all the way up to whatever range compared to the GPR. Along the left here, we've got time to kill. The higher, the worst. So you can see here the GPR at 0 meters has a higher time to kill than the AMAs. It takes longer to kill here. This same trajectory stretches all the way out. The GPR has a slightly worse damage range, so it falls off at about 46 meters, and it goes up to about a 430-ish millisecond time to kill, whereas the AMAs can stretch this fastest time to kill all the way up to 50 meters before it starts to fall off slightly. This is without headshots, by the way. This is completely, if you're just shooting all body shots, this is the time to kill. Now, this sort of balances out the fact that the GPR has better recoil and better mobility, because you could argue that you'd risk losing time to kill for better mobility and better recoil, which makes them 2 really balanced options. We're then going to be looking at all of the SMGs, okay? We're going to speed run this because it's a little bit pointless. It's a little bit nonsensical here because you're not really going to be using a lot of these subs because of their poor factors. So, what do we see here? We see the compact. The easiest way to determine what's the fastest time to kill at any range is to look at what color is the lowest. So you can see here the compact in orange is the lowest time to kill, slowly or closely followed by the KSV, all the way up to about 13, 14 meters or so. Then it's the C9, the Jackal, back to the compact, KSV, C9, Jackal, compact for a while, then the C9 for a little bit, slight bit of PP919 for the first time. That becomes the fastest time to kill in this very tight gap, and then it's the C9. So what does 30 meters look like? Where do we see this benefiting people? Okay, at which point would you consider saying, okay, everything within this range, for example, the compact or the KSV will beat any other submachine gun? And it looks like this. 30 meters, you're in lights on vault. Between this door and the farther door is about 30 meters, and that's where you're going to be wanting to use compact or the KSV. Moving back to what we look like here, when we consider what range would be best for the C9 to be used, it looks a little bit like this. Okay, so 34 meters or so is from T3 all the way to P2, and that's probably where the C9 would kill any other SMG the quickest. Now, I would argue that there is only, as I said before, two main SMGs in competition with each other for ranked play. The C9 recoil is too unreadable, the PP919 simply doesn't kill quick enough, and the compact has really poor mobility, and that's, so to be fair, so does the PP919. The compact has poor mobility and the recoil patterns aren't great. So how does this stack up? How do the Jackal and the KSV stack up against the ARs we have in ranked play? So again, this is without headshots, and we can clearly see here the impact of what we're seeing. So up to about 14 meters, the KSV is the fastest time to kill. And that would be, for example, if you're in bottom P4 on Vault. I'm using Vault as an example for each of these because it's in every 3 game mode. Bottom P4 on Vault, 40 meters. If you sit in this corner, that door's 40 meters. The door on your right will be within 40 meters. The door on your left is definitely within 14 meters. If you're in a room like this, the KSV is going to be what you want because it kills very much quicker. Between about 14 and 17 meters, the Jackal would become the fastest. And then from about 17 to 20 meters or so, the KSV would take that reign again. So it's a little bit tricky. Okay, now what does 20 meters look like? Back art to top art, that's about 20 meters. Okay, and if that's the range we're looking at, you're probably best off using the KSV for most of that range. Okay, it's the fastest killing gun. Other than this, you know, there's 4 or 5 meters here where the Jackal would outpace that, would outkill you, but the KSV for, I guess, most of the distance between 0 to 20 would be the gun you want to use. Now, as soon as it gets to 20 meters and above 20 meters, this is where the AMAs and the GPR really take over. Okay, the AMAs reign supreme anything after 20 meters, which means that if you're ever in a situation where you want to beat an AR in a gunfight, you want to make sure that you always stay within that 20 meter range, otherwise you're gonna lose your battle. You're probably wondering then why so many people use the Jackal, considering it's such a weak time to kill compared to the KSV, at least at most of the ranges between 0 and 20. And that's because of its mobility. It's got such good mobility. People prefer its ADS time. It means you can put a little bit more attachments into recoil, perhaps. But this really, that's all about why it should be balanced like this. And I run the KSV because it does kill quicker. As long as you can deal with a very slightly slower mobility and fairly similar recoil, the KSV is absolutely goated. So let's take a look at what this does with headshots. Very interesting. Okay, so if we use the headshot time to kill to look at this, and this isn't if all bullets are headshots, we're going to be getting into that in a second. This is just if it's the reduced time to kill because a certain amount of headshots have been hit. The Jackal nor the GPR are never the fastest time to kill gun. You can see here the Jackal is always, you know, weirdly, always the worst, it's never the top, and the GPR is also never the fastest time to kill. What is interesting is that both ARs actually kill quicker than the Jackal at every range with headshots. You can see here the Jackal actually never, even at these really close ranges, the Jackal with their headshot values never outperform the ARs at any point. Okay, that's really interesting, because essentially what it means is, why would you ever use the Jackal at those close range if you know you can hit headshots? Because the AMES kills quicker with those headshots at close range, which is true. But you can see here, after 20 meters, up to 20 meters, sorry, it's the KSV, and then past that, it's the Jackal, which is sort of similar to what we saw in the past anyway. After 20 meters, the Jackal would beat the KSV, but neither AR. Okay, so Jackal, if you're going to hit all your headshots, or you hit your headshots, is the KSV, sorry, is the gun to use between 0 and 20 meters. If you want to use a sub past that, the Jackal's going to be the better one for you, because you can see the green line is lower than the yellow line here. You can see here that the GPR after 20 meters will also beat both subs, but just not the AMES as well. So if you want, if you're trying to compete above that 20 meter range, and you can guarantee some headshots, the GPR is probably what you're going to be wanting to use, but it won't compete with the AMES at that range. So let's go into how many headshots we're actually looking at here. So the KSV up to about 13 meters, which is about here, requires no headshots to be the fastest killing gun. Okay. And to get from 30 meters to about 20 meters, you actually need all 4 bullets to hit the head. Whereas with a Jackal, you only need 3 or 4 bullets to stay this low between 17 and 22 meters. Okay, let's try and rephrase that so it's simple. Up to 13 meters, this KSV requires no headshots to get this really fast time to kill. And within 17 meters, the Jackal requires no headshots to get this real fast time to kill. Now, however, with a KSV, in order to get this time to kill all the way up to 20 meters, you would need to hit all headshots to get that speed. Whereas with a Jackal, you'd only need 3 out of 4 headshots to maintain this really low level of time to kill. So that's why it's not quite as black and white as you would expect, okay? What that does mean, though, is that within 30 meters, the KSV is going to be the quickest killing gun out of these 4, no matter what, whether you hit headshots or not, okay? Now, interestingly, the AMES only needs 2 out of 4 bullets to hit the head for this fastest time to kill, up to about 15 meters. Okay, so the AMES, as long as you hit 2 bullets in the head, up to about here, will maintain this really fast time to kill. When you go up past this, you need 3 out of 4, up to about 50 meters or so, to maintain this time to kill. All right. The GPR also only requires 2 out of 4 bullets to hit the head at the fastest time to kill, up to about 18. Okay, so if you look at this red line, about up to here is where you'd need 2 out of 4 bullets to hit the head for this faster time to kill, and then 3 out of 4 to maintain this fastest time to kill from about here all the way to the end. So, what does this all mean? This all means that we've got a fairly balanced meta. Okay, if you want something that kills really quickly, but you're willing to risk potential mobility issues and you're willing to stay relatively close range, the KSV is going to be the gun for you. If you want a slightly better range with the KSV, you either need to hit all your headshots, or you're going to have to just use the Jackal at those real close ranges, all right? And still hit some headshots. But with the Jackal, you do get the added mobility. So it's up to you whether you want to be a little bit more mobile with slightly better damage range, or slightly less mobile but with a real fast, impactful time to kill. Both recoils for the Jackal and KSV are relatively the same. Now, moving on to ARs, I feel like the AMES is the clear choice. If you're using an AR anyway, you're going to be a little bit stiffer. You're not going to be moving around as much as you would be with a sub. And I've always say, if you want to use the GPR like a sub, you may as well just use a sub. So yeah, I hope this has helped. As I say, you can pause any of these slides if you want. You can run it back and ask me any questions down in the description below. But I'm hoping this has made it clear to you. For me, I'm going to be using the KSV. And then the AMES probably. The KSV is a lot of fun and kills really quickly and shocks a lot of people at those closer ranges, so it's great. So yeah, that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now.